Hey, I'm Supats, lifelong solopreneur. Now living my life with only one passion to help solopreneurs to launch their digital products on fast track so that they can be profitable as fast as within 1 week, and they want to scale, they can join the membership. And as a bonus, I show them how they can sell their digital products all over the world using affiliates. Without further delay, let's get started. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to New Beginning Inspiration for You podcast. Today's guest, Doug, he is really going to inspire you because just by looking at his profile, his website, I'm already inspired. And after listening to him, I'm pretty sure I will be inspired because we are thrilled to welcome Douglas Katz, and he's a West Point graduate. He's disabled army veteran, but hey, he used his challenges for greater innovation. He created adaptive product innovation and that mission to change something in kitchen. Who knew that someone can convert adversity into such a great benefit? So without further delay, let me invite Douglas or Doug.
Thank you so
Doug,
much. I'm really happy
the
to be here
stage
and
is
join
all
you.
yours. Welcome to New Beginning Inspiration for You podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm
I
super
want to
happy
know
to be
your
here.
story. I want to know your story. Yeah, so just tell means I haven't interviewed any veteran. I think I have interviewed only one veteran till now, and I have been podcasting for 3 years. So I'm really eager to know your story.
Excellent.
So tell
Excellent.
us how. Yeah.
Well, let me know where I should start. Do you want me to go like way back to when I was in?
Oh no, no problem because the stage is all yours,
So,
and we have time.
pretty normal background. Yeah, grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, graduated East Grand Rapids Pioneers. And then went to West Point in 1989. Did 4 years, which is, it's a normal university in that regard. Graduated in 93 and went into the Army to complete my requirement. Spent 5 years in the field artillery in a bunch of different roles. And I'll kind of talk about that maybe a little later on. I think how that shaped the ability to do what I'm doing now. But, in 98, when my commitment was up, the world was different. Things were starting to, it was a time of a lot of peace. Actually, it was right before the Bosnian conflict. And it was more profitable to get out. I kind of consider it a mistake. It's probably a different show. I should have stayed in a little longer, I think. But I decided to get out and spent time in the private sector in everything from rail castings, like old school pouring steel type of rail castings for a company that I don't think exists anymore. Then I spent a good amount of time in the telecom industry in marketing and operations roles, and then moved into lending after the bottom fell out of the telecom industry, and had been in lending for about 21, 22 years. And just the timing was good because the market was changing in such a way that there might not have been the ability to make money doing it anymore, right? Like fundamentally lending in a bad housing market is tough. With technologies coming like AI, I just think it's not necessarily going to be what I had been in for 2 decades. I am a unrepentant and big hobbyist. I have more hobbies than I have time. And one of my hobbies is making knives, which I love, but I'm not as good at it as I would like to be. But the problem solving in the military really brought me to a certain point where I have my own upper extremity issues, some from the military, some just from living a very full life. And I'm also an avid home chef. And when my arm was acting up right before I had shoulder surgery, I couldn't wield a knife the way I wanted to. So I couldn't really prepare the food I wanted to. I couldn't, and I couldn't make a knife, right? Like at that point, I couldn't swing a hammer. So I was messing around in my shop, and I had some old junk circular saw blades sitting around that I used for experimentation, and was able to create this, which is the NULU. It's an adaptive knife designed around, and we call it adaptive, but we're getting more to a point now in understanding that adaptive design is good design. If an adaptive product helps somebody do something that they otherwise couldn't, then it's better for people who can do the job, right? Fundamentally, it's the same task. And when I said I was going to talk a little bit about the military, and I got to go Army. Army is playing Navy today in basketball. So I got to root for my alma mater, go West Point. But in the military, the way that you are evaluated for something is task, condition, and standards, right? It's a task that you have to do under certain conditions to a certain level of standards. And it's a good way of creating a baseline. And we looked at that as a team and said, wait a minute, are we looking at adaptive the wrong way? Because if ultimately your ability to do a task to a set of conditions and standards is the baseline, then anything short of that is an inability to do it or a disability. And I think people look at disability as this permanent life restricting type of condition, or it could be from a condition that causes that condition. But the reality of things is it's not. And if we can make it a bigger tent and have people understand that, in a way, let's say it's using a knife in the kitchen and you have to cut something, let's say cut a carrot. And really, it's not formal conditions and standards, but there's a task that you're trying to do. And if you can't do it all the way, you're in a sense disabled. By that definition, children would be disabled to be able to do that task. But we just say, oh, they're not old enough. So what we did is we said, well, wait a minute, let's get this on paper. And we created and when I say we, my team, not that I'm insane, only one personality in here. I have a great team working with me. But we looked at it and we said, it's not binary. And there's a scale. And in the same way, like autism and some other conditions have approached it from a spectrum component, what we found was disability didn't look at it that way. And people were looking at things that were inconveniences as inconveniences, not disabilities. So we created what we call the ability curve model, where based on any type of task you'd want to do, for us, it was kitchen tasks, you can plot what people's ability to do certain things on a scale of 1 to 10 looks like through their entire life cycle and at given points there. That's how we defined the market, but that's how we're also trying to bring thought leadership to adaptive design, because the more that people understand that adaptive is better, and they're likely going to age into, I shouldn't say likely, we all will be aging into the need for these type of things at some point. And the sooner that we don't poison the well of good products by having preconceived notions and ideas about what that looks like, is better. Then all of a sudden, and what's crazy is we're finding things like in technology, someone will adapt. They'll buy an app that makes things easier, but for them, they don't think of that as adaptation, right? It's adapting the human brain's inability to do tasks at a certain level, or it makes them easier because our brains haven't evolved to the extent of technology. They're adapting. It's just in a different context. We're trying to bring that context to the physical world, where I think because there's a visibility to it sometimes, like if you get a senior, and both my wife and I have been caretakers for our parents throughout different times. My dad lived with us for a while. He passed away last year. We've been caretaking for my wife's folks. And you look at how they age and how they lose capabilities. Try and get one to use a walker. Man, you would think that thing has electricity running through it and they're going to get a shock. But it's an aspect of giving up their view of themselves. There are all these things that are tied to their identity, when it actually protects them from a fall and it allows them to be more mobile. And it's interesting. And it's the first podcast I brought this up on with my dad. He was in his late 80s. He died at 89. And I got him one of these walkers that has wheels on it, like one of these more like sporty ones. And he was walking in his late 80s, probably a quarter to a half mile a day. I live in an area with a lot of hills, so it was impressive. But that was a great adaptation. And he was adapting to where he was, and it was better for him on every level. So we hope to bring that. I hope that's a good enough story.
Oh yeah, that is really amazing. Means yeah, I always want to know more about especially veterans, their background, and yeah, I really learned a lot. And so this looks like really a purpose-driven innovation. It is not just an innovation. So, what is the veterans' mission to make every task accessible? How can they do that?
Well, we're the way we're put together as an organization. NULU is one of our brands, but my partners and I have a venture studio called Red Leg Innovation. We want to bring other products to market. Products we start with adaptive, then assistive, then adjacent, right? So we look and say, if we go after the adaptive market first, it's a needs-based market, right? So we are solving a problem for them. And as we gain some lessons and we gain more visibility, then we're able to shift more toward not needs-based, but making life better. Because someone's not going to, if they're able to do a task, maybe a little degraded, but they can still do it, there isn't the call to action to necessarily get something new to solve that problem. They wait until there's a need. So what we're hoping is that cool design, because the thing that's throwing the whole monkey wrench in this is we were very, very deliberate about who we were going to target, right? All the business coaching and everything says narrow, stay narrow. And we're like, all right, needs based. We know who needs this product. The problem is other people go, that's really cool. I would love one of those. So it creates a little bit of the fog of battle in how we want to bring it to market. But what we may have happened upon is there just needs to be better design so that people want to use the product. So if you make a cool product that works better, then all the better. And what's when we started down this route, I mean, I make knives on my own. Like I make them as gifts because if they're imperfect, people love that, right? They're like, oh, it's special because it's not perfect. And I do it as an outlet, but I was never going to be what my career was. I wasn't in that industry. I was in lending. So I think my team, who are all a little bit older, and I do want to stress that because I think a key component of my success, and I have to change something in my profile because it says I lead a team of over 50 professionals. It's not over 50 in number, it's over 50 in age. And I think that's also created a wisdom of how we're looking at things and an ability to coalesce around this vision. And a lot of us are our own clients, our own target market. That also has allowed us to look at things a little bit differently. And not being knife people, we're bringing all these different views. Now, we do have a knife guy who's been in the industry for a long time as part of our team. And that's been amazing for us to figure out manufacturing and logistics and just what's possible. But in some ways, I think the benefit has been nobody telling us, well, that knife's going to be too hard to make. You don't want to do it. We had a lot of people, and I've had really generous people along the way give me advice, but all of them said, hey, you know what? It's not with current equipment out there. It's just not possible large scale. That's why we're making it overseas. But we've managed to figure this out. And I think our end game, to answer the question with way too much, but our end game is to change that viewpoint of stuff like this and bring better design that benefits everybody and creates sort of more of a unity around just better things for everybody, right? Like ultimately, if we're allowing at the same time somebody who otherwise couldn't prepare their own meals to do so and maintain independence and be able to have a nutritional diet, right? I'm part of a osteoarthritis group on social because I have that. And everybody's on there complaining. Well, part of it is, and I get it, right? Like it sucks. But, you know, they say diet is a big part of it. Well, if we could help somebody use an anti-inflammatory diet, great. At that same time, let's say that person who needs that is being taken care of by a caretaker. Well, all the better, right? Now we're helping that caretaker have independence. And it's sort of, I think it's this cascading benefit that we hope to bring to more people to be able to say, wow, why isn't everything designed better for everybody? Because the benefits are innumerable. I mean, you can list them. We would run out of show.
Okay. So I just wanted to ask you, means can you just navigate through the design process, because this looks really innovative. I want to know, means, what was your thought pattern? Because initially, first it has to be in your mind before you
Yeah,
manifest
and
it into reality.
it's interesting because this has been a journey, and for me, it's a couple of things, right? I think that I have come to understand that I just think differently than a lot of people, right? So, um, I am very much into the problem solving type thought process. West Point, among other things, is an engineering school. It was the first engineering school in the country, and I was what was called a management major, which I take a lot of abuse for because it was like, you know, it was kind of an easy major, but I wanted to go into business, so it made sense. But the approach of there's a problem, I want to solve it, and it was my problem. So what I would tell people out there, your viewers and listeners, is if you find the problem, the passion comes. And the hard part isn't the ideation of problem to solution, it's solution to commercialization. If it's something that they want to commercialize, right? It might just be something that solves a problem. But I think a problem solving mindset helps you everywhere, right? Like I just today, there was something beeping on my first floor, and I'm like, God, it's driving me crazy. But I stopped and said, I got to go through this process in the right way. And finally, it wasn't the alarm, it wasn't the thermostat, it was one of the smoke detectors. But that type of problem solving of not like getting angry and just going, okay, I can break this down. For me, it was I wanted to cook. I wanted to play around with some knives out in my garage, but I couldn't swing a hammer and I couldn't cook. So how can I solve that problem? Everybody has problems. The biggest issue I think in our society today, and I will totally throw a shout out to Jason Knight, who was one of the judges on Forge and Fire for the early seasons. And he does some great stuff on YouTube, and he was amazingly generous. Like I called him at one point to talk about this knife. But what it inspired me to call him is he had a bunch of great videos about being a maker. Just go make something. It doesn't matter if it looks like crap. You'll get better at it, but be a maker. And I think as a society, if we can shift from a constructive and a creative away from a consumptive thought process, innovation comes. If all you do is consume the innovations of others, you will never create. And I think it's been this explosion of for me, it's the third act is the best, because for me, it's unlocked this thing. And it's always great when your kids can give you wisdom. And my 19-year-old one day, we were at lunch and I said, I really wish I'd figured this out sooner. And he was like, no, Dad, you figured it out at the right time because you can appreciate it. And yeah, this is where sometimes I say, we got to give Gen Z and beyond a little more credit, because there was a wisdom in that kind of put me on a better approach. And, all of that sort of combined with a concept I've been playing around with in my head. And I actually wrote an article about it, where people also have to understand the timeline of their life, right? Because ultimately, the big problem is starting. It's always starting. Like, how do I start? Well, I built this in my garage I ordered a blank, inexpensive. This is 3D printed. And I bought the grinders on which I made this from Harbor Freight. Like, I have a professional knife grinder, but you can start inexpensively. But I think it's this matter of having to look and say, I'm going to solve a problem, but solve it today. And the concept I was talking about is I was playing around with math in my head and thinking, okay, if you were to look at day one of your life and the actuarial tables, the average human being in the United States lives to about 77 years of age. That makes every year of your life, starting at year one, 1.3%, and every year increases from them. So if you are my age, 54, what are you waiting for? At that point, if you're going to live, let's say I'm lucky enough to live to 89, like my dad, I'm way past double that 1.3%. I'm probably closer to, 3 or 4% every year. So I think there's very much an aspect of people having to say, there's a problem to be solved. I have a passion about solving it. It's not going to solve itself. And there are only so many tomorrows. And it's trite. And that's why I've tried to bring it to like a percentage, because I think if people started looking and saying, wow, I spent the last 1.3% of my life or more watching everything everyone else created and bitching about the way things are, then I'm creating my own problems. And I think that we just need more people understanding they have the capability. We live in a time, whether you like AI or not, we live in a time of amazing resources for anything. It doesn't have to be making the next great knife. It could be a nonprofit. It could be something that you can provide impact. And I love that you brought that up, because I do think selling this versus a pet rock or whatever is something that I can get passion behind, because there's nobody, right? With all the political rifts today, I haven't met the person yet that says, well, that's a bad idea because I don't agree with you on this. They look and they say there's universal idea. Everybody wants to help somebody who can't help themselves, or at least I hope they would. That's how I was raised, and that's how I raised my kids. And I think the more we can bring that back into the zeitgeist of how we do things, the better we can be. If it's not about tearing down anything, people, institutions, or other things that provide value, the better off things are. And I think if you can bring that to one small thing, this has been interesting, because I have a friend who has MS, and I already knew I had a passion for it, but the friend with MS said, you've happened upon something we all talk about in the MS community, and that is the great impact of small improvements. And I think the more people can also like, you don't have to invent the new TikTok or whatever. You can come up with something small, or you can make small improvements that have a huge amount of impact.
Yeah, thank you. That was really great explanation. And you know, everybody has inherent desire to help other person, and but only thing we don't even let it come out of our conscious. And you took action, and that is the great thing. Means basically, we have one life to live, and we don't want to live with regret. So you took action. That is the most important thing. And you said, yeah, we learn from others and we learn from our kids. It's not like that just because they are younger and they born after us doesn't mean they cannot. Yeah, everybody has wisdom, and you are open minded. That is really great. I really appreciate. And so you have a various background, you have various careers and all. So how they shaped? I mean, because you mentioned about yeah, your
Yeah, I've
veteran,
been
but
in. I
you have many other backgrounds too.
I think that it's two things. There's the one side of it just experientially, right? Learning different things, learning to understand and appreciate different industries. But I think, and this was, I was on a podcast yesterday, and it was interesting. They said, what's the biggest thing that you learned like in the last month? And I said, I don't like to look at the single things that you learn. It's always seeking more knowledge. And I think that's really my takeaway has been, if you're sort of hungry for that. And it's interesting, you mentioned open mind, and I agree 100%. But then even bringing to that, there's a concept. I did martial arts for a long time. I did Aikido. And for me, it was as much about like Zen as fighting. But there's a concept across all martial arts called the beginner's mind. And I love it, because what it does is it makes you identify, I guess, if that's a word, disidentify with experience that you might have that you're tying your identity to. So this, I have to present a certain, it's like the person who leaves a job and suddenly has nothing because their identity was their job and they cannot open their mind. The beginner's mind of going into something and saying, this is something of which I know nothing about, but I'm going to learn more about it and take what I have learned and apply to that and broaden my scale. So until 5 years ago, maybe I had never made a knife. My wife knew that I liked doing that type of thing, and had happened upon on vacation with my son, a gentleman who sold knives, but also ran classes when he was still doing that. So because I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I want to make a knife, I went and wanted that knowledge. And for me, that was something that that taught me the basic skill set. But if I had said, I don't want to do it, but that's where the resources come in, because I think the other part about it is people say it's just too much. Like, I can't do it. And things are so inexpensive now with AI. Even just sitting down, and I know people have different views on it. My viewpoint is, I'm a comic book nerd from years back, and I do love what like the Marvel universe did with Jarvis and Tony Stark. And what I tell people is, be your own Tony Stark. Get AI and ideate with it. Don't tell it to do something. That can be the first person that you tell your crazy ideas to, or the first entity. I'm anthropomorphizing that. But the ability to bring it to that type of discussion where then you can have discussions with more people, that has never existed. That didn't exist 5 years ago when I made this. Like, I could have said, does anything out there exist? Now it's you can do anything. So what I would tell people is, try it. What have you got to lose? Unless it's exceptionally expensive equipment. And I would bet that in a lot of areas, if it is an equipment intensive thing, you can find shared workspaces, not like the shared office workspaces. There's places that have ability, that they have equipment that you can schedule time on. There's educational resources. One of my big things, I'm trying to do bees now. I want to make honey. And there's so many resources, from things at local community colleges, right? There's so many ways that people can do it. And I think it's just a matter of not necessarily anchoring themselves in where their background is. In fact, go do something you have no idea about. That's where the passion will come, because you're likely bored with what you've been doing for 20 years.
Yeah, that is really good. Means go somewhere you totally actually, yeah, don't know anything, and that is a great approach. Totally appreciate that. So I just would like to see the comparison between Nulu knife and regular knife. Can you
Oh, good.
compare and how it is
So
useful for mobile?
yeah,
Yeah,
so this
yeah,
this
please.
this of course is not a kitchen knife. This is one I've been working on for a friend, but you can see, and I'm sorry about the glare. A normal knife is linear, right? So you've got handle, handguard, and a blade, and it might not have a handguard, right? If it was a chef's knife, it would be longer. But when you cut, you can see that I have to put pressure on joints, hand, elbow, shoulder. Granted, I would be down cutting, but the force that I want to cut with is this way, and I'm putting force this way. That transfer is very, very inefficient, and it leads to pain for people who already have issues, but it can cause repetitive stress injuries. And it's going to be hard to do this, but with the NULU, you're holding it. So instead of linear, it's got a force transfer geometry that we call it, that works from a circular perspective. So if this is the point at which you grab it, the most efficient transfer of force is a direct vector, right? So I can slice and it's direct. I can chop, it's direct. I can chop this way. I can chop this way. And like a hammer motion, I can chop this, or I can cleave this way. I can cut this way, julienne style. And even this corner is becoming a good corner doing. So what we like to say is NULU is the knife that adapts to you, because there's no right way to use it. But what it does is it doesn't make you work against geometry. So it's just a better experience. It's the only knife and again, this one's a kind of an ugly early prototype. But again, what it does is and this actually, I think, and I'm kind of going full circle, but what people will find is their experience all of a sudden comes into play later on, once they've ideated and validated. Because what I looked at was, I was cutting and I'm like, well, wait a minute. This is exactly like martial arts. And at that point, I was also taking Krav Maga, and there's some striking in that. And I'm sorry if there's noise upstairs. My wife is just letting the dogs out. But let's say you're striking, right? You want force transfer, right? And actually, this, when I was in the Army, this is the best force transfer for an effective strike. Well, there's very little difference, right? If I'm cutting, it's the same thing. So I think what generally people will also find is they know some of the things that are that will provide further lift for their idea. They just sort of again have to open their mind and say, "Oh, wait a minute, I know why this works. This works because if I'm striking and there's no tool involved, I don't want to break my hand. So a better way to do it is better force transfer." So this is where things all kind of come together, and I think that's where the magic happens.
So, what have you done for marketing? Have you been to Shark Tank, or have you
You know,
approached really big chefs like Gordon Ramsay or Gilda or anyone like that?
well, we've done a Kickstarter. The Kickstarter ended up successful. I would have liked more successful, but in the middle of the Kickstarter, I realized I had never bought anything off Kickstarter, right? So I was playing someone else's playbook, and we did fine. We learned a lot. And Shark Tank is actually amazingly hard to get onto. We have applied to that. There are a couple of other ones, but what we're really finding is not to tie our wagon to one idea. So I think if we get some momentum, we can get better recognition, right? So I've gone through an accelerator that was a veteran accelerator called Institute for Military and Veteran Families, free for veterans. It was amazing. It really, really helped our development. And what we really learned was how to package it up, right? And pitch and do all that kind of stuff, which is great. But what we're finding is money these days really goes to technology. We've had challenges finding investors who have a product focus, at least in the seed money and pre-launch. So the other great part about having more seasoned team, right, over 50, is we have some money. So there's the bootstrapping approach, there's the investment approach. With consumer products like ours, what we've really learned is people will say it's cool. They want to know how many of these you're going to sell. If they're putting their money in, they want to know how they're getting their money out. So we've really come to the realization that we need to sell a bunch of these first. And the good news is in about a month, more or less, we get our first shipment to fulfill our Kickstarter. Very soon after that, April, May timeframe, we're going to be getting our first order. And we're already ordering manufacturing inventory because we believe in the product. I think when we have a good quarter and a good year, we can go to investors, whether it's Shark Tank or anybody. It is a visual product. So I do, other people said home shopping network. My answer to that is, hey, get me on it, man. Like if you know somebody, give me. But it does speak to one thing. And I think that if anyone's starting a business and they're listening, what they really should do is talk about it. And that is contrary to what everybody tells you. What does everybody tell you? Don't talk about it. Someone's going to steal it. I think it's a lot of BS because a couple of things. One, think of how hard it was to get yourself out of the starting blocks. And you're talking to other people. Most of what they're going to do is criticize your idea. They're not going to try and steal it. And when you talk about it, you find all these people. So my ongoing joke, which is getting old, but I still like it, is that I'm sort of halfway between Forrest Gump and Oppenheimer in that for the first time in my career, when we brought NULU out, I wasn't trying to white knuckle control everything. I was very much about the beginner's mind. And I'm not going to go into this because I'm trying to control what I don't understand. So it was more about just going and talking and asking questions. And along the way, I picked up our attorney. I picked up our COO. I picked up our president, who is a knife industry veteran. But the first guy I picked up was a close friend from decades past who I knew did design work, but it was in the toy industry. So it wasn't like on my radar. And he's like, Doug, we're going to do this. This would not have happened. Cut my leg off there. This would not have happened without him, because if I showed you the first version of this, it was very, very primitive because I was just using it to test things. But with a real designer, I was able to take it to the stratosphere. The other thing is, I think with age, greed falls by the wayside for impact. And I wasn't dead set on protecting the equity of the company to the detriment of the company, because I feel it's great if NULU is a home run. I think it will be. If it's a single or a double, there's a lot more up here in Red Leg Innovation. We have 3 or 4 other products that we're working on. I have another product that I unfortunately can't talk about that I'm going into an accelerator in about 3 weeks to try and get that off the ground. And we really want to have a bunch of brands that we can work around that all really fill an impactful place in the marketplace.
So we talked about marketing and promotion. So what about manufacturing? Because whenever you go on Shark Tank, they are talking about why not to manufacture offshore. And now the new president, the tariff rules. So I really don't know how means basically it is going to be.
Well,
Don't know.
this is
Which
where finding an experienced person in an industry becomes very helpful. So one of the first things I did, and I've had other side businesses and side hustles and ideas, and I was always, banging around on my computer. Oh, I'm going to figure this out myself. And not only did I talk to, Jason Knight, who I had talked about, I reached out to a bunch of CEOs of knife companies to just say, I'm inexperienced. I'm looking for help. And it was contrary to what I would have done in the past, but it was the best idea I could have had, because we learned as a team, we're probably not going to be able to make it in the US. It's probably going to have to be ground by hand right now. One guy with a company called Tor Knives, super great guy, the CEO of Tor Knives. So shout out to him. I'm blanking on his name right now. Took an hour to explain to me how the manufacturing, like in the knife industry, if you order large grinders that do production at scale, they are mostly customized. That you order it from a company, you wait 3 years to get it, you then can manufacture a certain type of knife, right? It's made optimized for whatever their business is built around. And you bring up an interesting argument with tariffs, right? Because for us, undoubtedly, this will impact people's lives. We can't make it in the US cost effectively. So when you throw tariffs out there, sometimes you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Now, our intent, and it's actually in our old first business plan, we wanted to make this thing in the US. And for the accessories and any other part of it that we can, we're making anything we can in the US. But with this, we just have to make it overseas. And the best thing to do is find somebody who knows what they're doing, but also go with your gut. Our original partner in that, strategic partner, was another military guy. So my team is a lot of military. We put a lot of trust in him, and it probably set us back a couple of months. So kind of the sniff test, right? If it feels like something's not going right, just from common sense, maybe put up the flag, but find people in the industry to help, because that will take you a long way. We were messing around for a long time, and then our knife industry veteran came on board, and he was like, we're just going to use my guys. So we would probably be selling these knives now if we had been a little bit more strategic in finding the right people to have on board. But the big thing, and the one that I'm going to the accelerator on, it's going to be exciting because my wife and I are starting this brand together, is, and I'm a rules guy. Like I'm a Libra. I'm all about like staying in the lines on certain things. But if you're an entrepreneur, you got to color outside the lines, I think. Not in the legal part, but in solution generation. Because if you're like, I have this great new product, it's going to be disruptive, but I'm going to go at it the same way everybody else has, you're not disruptive. So this is where I would tell people resources will help you. So find an accelerator that maybe has a fellowship. If you're a disadvantaged business, there are people who have succeeded, who are female or African-American or Hispanic or Asian, who want to give back to those communities, and there are specific accelerators for those individuals. Military and military spouses, veterans included, there's a ton out there. There's IVMF that I went through. There's Warrior Rising. There's Founders Institute that I'm going in through right now, has a military fellowship. But if you find those, the stuff that you're talking about, manufacturing, marketing, they have mentors. They have all this stuff. I think it's a matter of just not knowing it's there. And because people don't know it's there, they don't know what they don't know. But the degree of help that I've gotten has been amazing. And I'm hoping at some point to be able to pay that forward and to find individuals either the military space and veterans or disabled. The disabled community is amazing in their ingenuity. They'll make stuff out of PVC, pool noodles, duct tape, and they will solve a problem. Again, going full circle because it's a problem they have. Some of it should be commercialized. Many in that community struggle just to make ends meet because they can't get decent employment, or their disabilities are substantial enough that they have no other way to get income. But then you'll see, like, there was one I was talking to in a pre-podcast thing, and you could see stuff in back, and I'm like, wow, and we were talking about things that they have made to be able to deal with their issues. And I think that, again, once you get past that ideation to validation, or not even that point, that's what there's for. Another good resource is SCORE. And with the degree that they are gutting the SBA that I've been reading about, which is a travesty, SCORE is, and I don't know what the acronym is, but it's retired executives who could be in a manufacturing experiential position to be able to tell you something. So if you're not sure, go get a SCORE, get a meeting with a mentor. Listen, they're old guys who love to talk about what they did. They'll keep you out of trouble, right? So there's a ton of resources who will tell you how to do it in the framework of what you want to accomplish. But what I would say is, in a time when everybody bitches about too many rules and things like that, don't impose rules on yourself with an idea that you feel is this idea that is going to be transformational and disruptive and financially great for you and your family. There are ways to have all of these things happen. It makes me think about this conversation I had with our general counsel, who was also our IP guy. And he was kind of laughing at me, and I'm sort of paraphrasing the experience, but he's like, Doug, whenever you talk, it's as if we're going to totally be successful. And 90% of businesses fail. And I said, if I believed that was us, then I wouldn't be in business. And we joke about it, but where it comes down to, and again, for someone who hates math, I like math. That 90% is it's a BS statistic, right? Because they're not all the same kind of businesses. They're not all, there's a lot involved with it. And what I tell people is, instead of listening to that statistic as a reason to not create or explore the kind of thing I'm doing, look at it as a challenge that you're not going to be in the 90%. Because if you go through an accelerator and you ideate properly and you validate properly and you research commercialization and you get help and you do things a smart way and you do it gradually enough not to create risk that's going to impact your family, but risky enough that you're taking risks, right? It's still true that fortune favors the bold. So if you do all that stuff right, you're not going to be in that 90%. You might fail, but a couple of things. You may be in now the 50% of well thought out, researched, and brought to market businesses that just fail, but you look at things differently. So after going through an accelerator for me, I looked back at a bunch of the ideas I had, and I'm like, well, of course, it didn't work for this reason. And the true entrepreneurs and the true people I know who are kind of walking the same path, man, they're the most optimistic group ever. And that's another thing I would tell people: get into the meetups and stuff of people who are doing what they want to do. If you're meeting up with people who are all telling you that you're going to fail, it's probably not the best place. And those could still be good friends. They're giving you advice in a way that they think is constructive. Expand your network to the people who are optimistic. And the funny thing is, when you go to these events with founders, one, they're usually apolitical because, like, entrepreneurs are an interesting group, right? Their company is always on their mind. So you're too busy thinking about helping someone else or figuring out who might be able to give you some good advice. But also, you can talk freely about your idea because all these people are working on their own ideas. So go to a place, and I hate to use the term safe space, but it's got relevance. Go to a safe place where you can talk about these things in a manner that you're not risking whatever you think. Now, I do always like to say, research IP. The old paradigms are wrong. I don't want to take a lot of time on this, but there's a group called usinventor.org that I'm a part of. The memberships are free, but they are fighting the fight for small independent inventors and people who want to retain their IP, which the decks are stacked against us. And you'd be amazed how many times I talk to people who are like, "What'd you get a patent?" I'm like, "Yes." I'm like, "Do you know what the PTAB is?" And they're like, "No." And I'm like, "Well, this is why a patent is not necessarily, you should get it, but you can spend tens of thousands of dollars and get a patent that may not be defendable." There's just a lot to it. So legal is a very good space to spend maybe a little more money, make sure you're researching who's helping you out, and make sure you understand IP, because an IP strategy is it's kind of like defenses, right? If you ever see old castles, you have a wall, but enough catapults will break down your wall. You want a moat and a portcullis and murder holes where you can pour oil down on people, right? It's a phased defense. And people have to understand, aspiring entrepreneurs have to understand how you protect all these things in a consolidated approach. And, you can see with that complexity, you just got to get a lot of good help.
Yeah, that is really good explanation. And I really resonate with your point. You said associate with people who have similar dream, because other people, they might be telling you from goodness of their heart, but they don't have actually experience in that particular field,
Right.
so they're telling from their perspective, and it may not be applicable to you. So many times, means if you share even with your friends and family, yeah, they haven't been where you want to go, they cannot guide you. And that's what I always tell solopreneurs. Only one solopreneur understands other solopreneur, neither their friends nor family. If
Oh,
they are not
100%.
solopreneur, you don't understand.
If
And that was the idea. Even I started my membership, and I just tell them, yeah, you need community, you need mentor, you need
yeah,
guidance, and that's you are not going to get from your friends and family. It is really good. And if you want to catch a cold, surround yourself with people who already have cold, and you will catch cold. And we learned it really hard way during COVID time. Hey, but if you want to go places, surround yourself people who have already been there, and you will reach there. I totally agree with your opinion.
well, and
So what's
can I add one
next?
thing to that? Is the
Mhm.
time that people are actually going to give you good advice, maybe you have an invention, will be they're going to ask two things, right? And this is how you know that they're, one, what problem are you solving, and what makes you different and able to solve that, and how big is the market. Those are the two things that you really need to be answering yourself, right? And there's something I can share, that if you want to share with your viewers, there are a lot of good templates out there to turn your idea into a pitch, because when you're talking to your friends, you should be pitching them, right? Who knows? They could be an investor. So what you want to be able to say is, my whatever, like this mouse solves this
Oh,
problem,
that's a great idea.
right?
Yeah.
So I think part of the issue also is you have to find the right people, but you can also use other people the right way if you know how to ask the right, or if you know how to ask them the right questions, right? If you're saying, "Hey, I got this great idea, but I'm just not sure. I would love to talk to you about it." And don't just say, "Well, here's what it is." If I had said, "Well, here's this knife," but if I say, "Hey, this knife helps, 28 million people keep their independence in the kitchen by providing a better cutting geometry, and we're gonna, here's roughly what all of a sudden people look and they're like, oh, wait a minute, like maybe I misunderstood this, right? They look at this, they see a weird knife that doesn't fit their paradigm of what a knife looks like. When I'm able to say, well, I researched this, and the number of people that can't do a task at certain conditions and standards is this big. Like, we've actually figured out that the applicable market, the total addressable market for this is over 100 million people in the US if you look at disability a different way. This is where then, if you start talking about it with other people in a framework of a person who's trying to create a business, then all of a sudden you see where, well, wait a minute, I got to research this a little more. I have to understand this a little bit more. That's when talking to even the naysayers. And if after all that they're a naysayer, you could keep them as a friend. But at that point, I just don't think there's anything productive to say, because they may be projecting their own risk-averse approach to things onto what you're trying to do. And, I always joke about like a corporate job, and I would never tell anyone to quit a corporate job, but I would tell everybody, remember, your corporate job is not as safe as you think it is. There's a lot of government workers this week and last week who thought they had a safe job. And I think that was the wrong assumption, right? Like, I used to, when I was in corporate America, I would tell the people who worked for me, the way this always really should work is I should be interviewing every day as your boss, but you're interviewing every day to be an employee of the company. And it doesn't mean that every day you got to knock your goals out of the park, but it means that everything that you bring to that has to be in that context. But even that said, the whims of somebody else could end that job tomorrow. And I think that oftentimes that is the impediment to moving into some new interesting thing, because it's always, oh, the resources aren't there. Well, I've already in the beginning of this interview said there are resources there. And then you look and say, okay, if you get rid of all of the objections, at that point, it's just not being ready to make it happen.
Yes, really appreciate your insights. I just wanted to ask you, so what's next? What's
Well,
next?
as
Because
I
you said
said,
you are
we're going,
innovating some more.
I'm
So,
hoping by summer. So I'm starting Founders Institute in mid-March. It goes for 90 days. And it's a really, really rigorous program. I would say people should check it out, because it is kind of a fellowship type thing. It's not hugely expensive. And they do have they do have fellowships. Even if you just get in, it's not terribly expensive, but it's a rigorous admissions process. But when I know when I get through with that, we will either have a very, very good business that we can move to the next step, or we'll have to pivot. So that's going to be tying me up. It's at least a 20-hour commitment every week. And while I'm still doing things with NULU, that should be filling my time pretty good. But I will definitely reach out to you when we launch this product. It's a little bit easy. It's a little bit easy to copy. And of course, everybody listening and watching is probably saying, well, wait a minute. You just said, you got to still be strategic, right? You want to talk to people at a point when your business plan. So I guess put it this way. If I was going to make something super simple, I'll use an example like my glasses here, right? My little Teddy Roosevelt glasses. A lot of people can make these. And if all I said was, I'm going to make like a modern day nose pinch glass that, okay, that's easy to copy. But if you spend time developing your business model and making relationships and building your team and doing all that, by the time you're talking about something, you have a head start. And you probably assembled a team that's got unique benefits to give you a differentiation. So when I'm done with that accelerator, and I believe it's, let's see, March, April, May, June timeframe, I am going to shoot you an email, because you'll be like, okay, I know he can talk about it, but it's going to be an amazing product. We also have one that we're working on in the sling space. When I had my shoulder reconstructed, I felt very vulnerable. So I was trying to kind of find a place to hide pepper spray or something, right? Because And we've come up with a design that's sort of like this hyper customizable thing. So a lot in store for me. And you might be able to tell now. I should have warned you earlier in the interview. I am late diagnosed ADD. After, well, you know what? It was interesting. It was about a year ago, and it was through the VA. And they were like, "Yep, but because I have a heart issue, they cannot give me ADD medicine." And they were like, "You seem to have done okay, so you just got to kind of have to live with it." But the ADD a lot of time bleeds over into my creative world, and my partners are like, "Man, you must be hard to live with because the brain doesn't stop." You know, I'm dating myself on this one, but there was a movie years ago with Michael Keaton and oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on his name. The guy who played Fonzie. And Michael Keaton was his character named Bill Blazkowski. And this was tape recorder time, right? People had tape recorders. And he said, "I got so many ideas all day long. I got to talk into this tape recorder." And that's me. So what we do in my venture studio, my team with that, is when we have an idea, any of us, we rate it and we figure out on a scale, once again, right? Like if you're like good idea, bad idea, it's a bad way to look at things. If you look at it on a scale of like, maybe there are some bad ideas, maybe it's a 1, but maybe it solves a problem that isn't a widespread problem yet, right? That's the yet. So what we do is as ideas come in, you can only work on so much. And when I say come in, one of us comes up with it. Hopefully later on we'll have other ideas coming in. But the ability to look and go, okay, this one's an 8. Let's figure out how commercializable this one is. Maybe this one's a 5. What's holding it from being like an 8 or a 9? And if it's, we don't want to throw anything out, right? Because then you look and you're like, well, wait a minute, we had a great idea in the past. So we're trying to create more of a process of brand and product creation as opposed to creating one brand. And it's done one interesting thing is it's created this viewpoint of, well, okay, yes, so there's tariffs, right? You brought that up earlier. But this idea that I'm working on right now, going through the accelerators, we can produce in the US. So it's having this portfolio approach to say, how do you, and it would just be like investments, right? When people invest their money, well, you want to be a little bit in bonds, a little bit in stocks, a little high risk, a little medium risk, maybe some precious metals, right? So that if anything is going on, you're buffered against changes. We're hoping to have a little bit more of that type of portfolio so that it's not like, oh my God, the world's ended because, steel items from Asia now are so adversely impacted from tariffs that we're caught with our pants down and have to find a new manufacturer and all that kind of stuff. We really want to have sort of that broad approach to things.
Thank you. I really appreciate. Now, if someone wants to look for the NULU Life or whatever your new innovation coming up next, where can they find you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Where can they find you?
Okay. I'm sorry too, but my hearing aids broke. The Army gave me hearing aids because they made me deaf, and one of my hearing aids broke. So I'm sorry if I'm having to say what.
No, but you had a whole hour. It was perfect. No problem at all.
So again, I'm not sure when this will air, but we will have knives available probably for pre-order in the April timeframe, delivery late April, early May. And at that point, they'll be able to order. NULUknives.com. That's our main website. If someone goes there early, like now, and it's mid-March or mid-February right now, there's not much there because it's still heavily tied to Kickstarter. And we're really focused on making sure that we take care of the people that believed and supported in us through the Kickstarter. But they can also go to the Kickstarter. There's videos there of it being used. We have a bunch of social pages, and they can always find me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I have my own NULU channel on TikTok. I can't believe I'm saying that one. And more importantly, I like YouTube a little better, where we're demonstrating. Those are a little more fun videos. I do them with my daughter when she's home on leave from the Coast Guard Academy. My other kids help me with it, but they're not as into like making the videos with me. So big digital footprint. And I would always say start at LinkedIn. My guess is your listenership and viewership are on LinkedIn. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're looking to do anything and you're not on LinkedIn, I think you're probably hurting yourself, because that's just where people are congregating. But there, they'll be able to find me. I also do some writing and things on the side, especially when it comes to adaptive technology and some of the ideas that we've talked about.
Okay, thank
Oh,
you. I
and one other
really
thing, I
appreciate.
will get
Sorry I
you.
took your
I
longer.
can get you my link tree if you want to put it in the description. On my
Oh,
link
sure,
tree, I
sure.
put
I can
all
put
of the
it in the
appearances
show
like
notes
this and
and the
everything.
descriptions. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I took little longer time because I just wanted to
Oh
ask you
no,
lots of questions and really appreciate.
absolutely.
Yeah, keep up the great work. Yeah, I mean, this is really, you are transforming your life and you're helping so many people in so many ways. Really appreciate your work. Thank you. Thank you for coming and blessing our
Oh,
community. And
thank you for
yeah,
giving
sure,
me the
I'm personally
opportunity.
interested in the NULU knife, and hey, I want to know more about your upcoming products too. Thank you.
Well, and I want to thank you for the opportunity because, again, in light of sort of where things are these days, uh, you know, there is an ability for people to still find joy. And I think as long as you're not your own worst enemy in doing that, and that's talking yourself out of it, I hope to inspire more people because, you know, when I started doing this and getting out of corporate America, I lost probably 30 pounds. And it wasn't like going on Ozempic. It was a matter of the cortisol of being in a cynical environment that is, I don't think nurturing to people meeting their full potential has an adverse impact. So I hope that being on this, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to be on this to hopefully inspire some other people to find the same kind of joy.
No, you're absolutely right. My friend is telling me she cannot just wait to retire because she said when she's away from her job, her sugar level is normal. But when she's working, her sugar level is really high. So there must be some point to it. And I got out of corporate America like just after a couple of years of working. So yeah, means I have been a solopreneur, entrepreneur almost whole of my life.
Yeah,
So
well, and
I'm
probably
really
would never.
thankful and blessed.
And once it's interesting, right? It's like breaking the sound barrier. Like once you stop and you're like, well, wait a minute, this isn't that hard to do. And yes, there's risk, but the entrepreneurs look and say, okay, maybe conditions change and I have to leave this business, but I'm going to go find the next one where I'm going to make money. It's a mindset, not a product or service. And it's great that you have this to be able to get that out to people.
Thank you. I really
Thank
appreciate.
you.
And yeah, God bless you. Keep up the great work.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Hey, thanks for joining us. We are blessed to have you as part of our community, and whatever way we can help you, serve you, let us know. Please subscribe and let us know how we can help you, what resources you want. We have lots of free resources and also free collaboration joint venture groups you can join and explode your business, because most solopreneurs quit their business before they launch their first products, and I don't want that to happen to you. And that's why we have special launch service where you can monetize your digitals and become profitable as fast as within 7 days. And if you want to scale your business, join our membership New Beginning Success Collaboration, where we'll provide you MRR and PLR products and collaborations so that you can scale your business with ease and effortlessly. And hey, if you want to sell your digitals all over the world, yes, we will provide you affiliates more than 200 countries. So everything is possible. Just live your dream, follow your dream, and whichever way we can help you, do let us know. Thank you and God bless you.